Hi guys, welcome to Pixel Affair. It's Kobe here. So this video is a quick tip from a question a friend of mine asked me, a friend of mine who is learning Cinema 4D recently. So what he's basically doing is he's trying to animate text on, so it sort of reveals a text, right, using effectors. So here I have this text written here, and if I come into my effectors and I choose plain effector with the text selected, you can see the plain effector is already affecting our text. So I'll select the plain effector and come to my effector parameters, and I don't want to affect position but rather the scale. So I want to scale it to 0 and then later reveal it one by one. So I'll choose uniform scale and set it to -1, but I can see there is nothing. So we are going to use our fields to reveal our text on. So I'll come into my fields tab in the plain effector and I'll create a linear field, right? So I have a linear field here, and you can see you can use it to affect our text. So let's set a keyframe for the linear field, right? So I'll come to my coordinates of the linear field and I'll come here at frame 0, I'll push it back, set a keyframe, and at frame 50 I'll bring it in to reveal all our text, I think, right? So this is basically what he was trying to do, right? And everything is fine, but he wants it to flip whilst it's coming in. So you basically come into a plain effector once again, come to your parameters, and now let's check rotation and to flip it on the pitch. So we set it to, like, say, let's actually bring it back to see minus 360 if we want minus 360. So if we go back and hit play, you can see it comes in flipping, but the animation doesn't look smooth. So basically what you do is use a delay effector, but he basically wanted it a bit springy, not necessarily smooth. So we select our text and use the delay effector. So if I come into my effectors with the text selected and choose a delay effector, and I'll drag it down, and if I hit play, you can see it smoothens it everything. But if we change it to, like, say, springy and hit play, you can see it gives it the springy effect. But if you check the rotation, it's affecting all angles, not just affecting the pitch, where we can see it rotating. Even if we exaggerate the springy, you can see the rotation is not right. So this is his challenge, and this is what he was asking me how to solve this issue. And that's when I figured, like, I told him the only way to do this is to use the ReEffector. So let me actually use the ReEffector to show how you solve this simple. It's quite simple, but the ReEffector is actually even more powerful than just this. So let's use the ReEffector. With my text selected, I'll come into my effectors and I'll choose the ReEffector, right? Let's drag it down and I'll come select the text again, come to the letter tab, the latest tab here, and let's delete the delay and the plain effector. So now nothing happens. If we hit play, you can see nothing happens for animation. So now let's select the ReEffector, come to its effector tab here, and now let's drag in our plain and the delay effector. So I'll drag in the plain effector and then I'll drag in the delay effector, and now if we hit play, you can see we have the same effect. So now the delay and plain effector is affecting our text through the ReEffector. So that's basically the basic use of the ReEffector. You can add several effectors in the ReEffector and it act as one effector, right? So now you can see it's affecting and everything is working fine. Now the advantage for the ReEffector is that if I select the ReEffector and come to its parameter tab, you can see in the delay effector we don't have access to the sub channels of our parameters. So the rotation is just rotation, scale just scale. You can't get access to the page banking and everything of the rotation. So but the ReEffector gives us the access to those things. So if I come here to the pitch, right, the only rotation you want to affect is just the pitch. You don't want it to affect the H and you don't want it to affect the B, the banking. So it's just the pitch. And now if you hit play, you can see now it's only the pitch that is affecting. Now aside even eliminating it, you have access to control even the strength of how much it's affecting. So you can see I feel like the pitch is too strong. So what I can do is I can reduce the strength here to, like, say, 50, and let's see, and you can see you get something like that, right? So that's the advantage when it comes to the ReEffector. Basically, this is what it does. I mean, but it does a lot more. So for instance, let me actually create a new scene and create, say, a cube, right? And I'll animate this cube, set a keyframe. Like, in fact, I'll just set a keyframe here, and at frame 50 I'll move it somewhere, move it all angles, let somewhere here, and even give it some random rotation and all of that, and set another keyframe. In fact, let's scale it a little bit as well, right? And set another keyframe for this. Actually, let's select it and set another keyframe here. Oops, I should have moved the keyframe. So let's undo, right, and move to frame 50. I'll move the whole cube somewhere here, rotate it a little bit and all of that, randomly rotate it, and even scale the position, the cube. And now let's set our keyframe. So if we hit play, you can see it's rotating and scaling and everything. Right, now let's say we have another object, we want to inherit the position, scale, and rotation of this particular cube. You can create another cube. Right, I'll call this one B, and I'll call the first one A, the animated one. And now I want to use the inheritance effector to inherit the A. So I'll come into my effectors and I'll create inheritance effector, make it a child of the B, and I'll change the inheritance effector. I'll come into it, the deformer tab, and I'll change it to object. And there you select the inheritance effector, come to effector tab, and now the selection, we want to the object mode, we want to use the apply, drag and drop in the A. So now our B will inherited the movement of the A. So if I hit play, and see our cube B is also rotating. In fact, yeah, everything is looking fine. But what if, say, we don't want it to affect the rotation, right? We can come into the inheritance effector parameters, and you can see you can ignore the rotation, and if you hit play, just affect the position and it doesn't rotate. But in what we don't have access to the sub channel, the same thing like with the delay and all that. So if, let's say, we want it to affect the position, right, but we don't want it to go on the Z and the X, how do we do that? We can use the how do you call it, the rotation, the ReEffector, I mean, basically. So I'll come into my effectors and I'll create the ReEffector, make it a child of the B, and take out the inheritance rather. Select the ReEffector and come to the deformer tab and change the deformation to object. And now in the ReEffector, let's come to the effector tab and drag in our inheritance effector rather. So now if you hit play, you can see it's doing the same thing as the object. Now in the ReEffector, we can come into the parameter tab and say we don't want it to affect the we just want it to affect only the Y. So we can now reduce the Z, take off the Z and the X. And now if you hit play, you can see our object is only in the position, it's just going upwards. In the pitch, we can also ignore, or let's say we don't want the H, but we want a little bit of the rotation, so of the B rotation, so we can actually reduce it to, like, say, 20 something. And now you can see, right, let's say if the scale, we don't want it to affect the scale Z, and but we want a little bit, so we basically can play around with it a whole lot. And aside that, you can also use it to affect the RGB colors of your effectors and all of that. So if I come in here back to where it's affecting the text and hit play, let's say we don't want it to affect the position of the object and everything, we just want to affect the colors. So I come into my linear field, my plane effector, come to the field tab, and I don't want the plane effector to affect the positions of our text, it's just the color, using the field color. So if we click on this sine wave here, it wouldn't affect the movement of our object, but now it will affect the color. So let's come into the ReEffector and come to the parameters, and let's enable color. Now if you hit play, you can see it affected our color. That's the only thing that's been affected, but we can actually use the RGB. So say we don't want to affect the G, we want it to only affect the R and B, and you can see that's what you see. You can actually take off the B, and now you see only the R. So basically you can play around with it, or we can reduce the amount of red, like play around with all of those things to get whatever you want. So that's basically about it. about the ReEffector. It does affect other things like weight, modify clones, time, and all of that. And it's quite interesting and powerful. I realize I've not done any video on this particular effector, and I've covered almost all the effectors. That's why I decided to do a quick tip on this and show this. I hope this video was useful and you like it. Kindly subscribe if you've not, and if you can, share it as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.